Hello and welcome to the Mick Minas podcast. We're doing this because I want to talk about different subjects and I don't want to do separate videos. So first of all, let's talk about cinematic universes. I believe the cinematic universes have destroyed the movie theatre experience. We have sacrificed artistic integrity for a factory of films. And this, of course, is Marvel Studios' fault. They started the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, what happens is when something's really successful, every studio in Hollywood wants to copy and pattern it, copy and paste it, and it never ever works. Did WB's attempt at a DC Cinematic Universe work? No. They're attempting DC Universe. Will that work? Who knows? Is it too little, too late to do it now? Probably. We will see what James Gunn does in the future. So Variety had this big article about Marvel Studios and all the problems they've had recently since Endgame. Now, we've all known that the Blade movie has been a clusterfuck. They started it, and then they started again, then they started again. And Mr. Ali, whose first name I can't actually pronounce, so we're just going to call him Mr. Ali, who is a brilliant actor, a gentleman of colour, an actor of colour. So we found out yesterday from Variety that one of the ideas was to have him in the background while having female characters at the forefront. One of the problems that Marvel and Disney have found in the past few years is their failed attempts at identity political commentary. And what is staggering here for me is you've got a character of colour in Blade, starring one of the best actors in Hollywood who happens to be black, and then you decide for him to take a back seat and put women in the forefront. You have got your representation, you have got your inclusion with your black character. Isn't that enough? To these people, it's never enough. Imagine the thinking behind this. As I say, one of the best actors in Hollywood as Blade. You know, all you have to do is create a great R-rated movie. What is the problem? Why have they had so many problems making this movie? Because Disney weren't built to make movies about characters like Blade. I was stunned when they announced Blade in the first place, and I knew it would be a problem because they're a family studio and they're not comfortable in making adult characters like Blade. You know, we've seen the discussions already where Constantine 2 has been in development and that director saying we want to do a full hard R rated movie. It's something the WB can do quite easily. I mean, you look at the Joker movie and the success of Todd Phillips' first movie. Very interestingly, the cinematographer says it's a very risque movie. But that's exactly what we want to see from these DC Elseworld movies. Risque entertainment. If you've got a cinematic universe, you can be very mainstream, very family friendly. But when you're doing Elseworlds, you can do whatever you damn well want. And you have your artistic integrity and you take your risks. The first Joker movie took a lot of risks. WB were built on risk taking. And when we see what they did to Snyder, they became the opposite of what their founding fathers, the Warner Brothers, wanted to do with that studio. But Disney weren't created to be risque. Disney were created by Mr. Walt Disney to make, fluffy, cutesy cartoons. Like their first one, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They were never built to be risque. And, that's the problem with Disney. Stick to the basics. But they got too greedy and they wanted to become bigger than they ever was. And basically, their empire is being destroyed from within because they got overly ambitious. For me, Disney needs to go back to being the studio that Walt Disney founded. And until they realize who they are, until they realize for them to stay in their lane. And this whole obsession with, ideological, identity, political representation and inclusion ends, they're going to be digging a deep hole for themselves. Now, I'm not against representation and inclusion. We live in a beautiful, wonderful world of black people, white people, Native Americans, Aborigines, Asian people, trans people, gay people. And all those people should have a right to have characters representing them. But it has to be done in the right way. I spoke yesterday about my couple of ideas of telling trans stories. I mean, Marvel could have told an original trans character superhero story. You start at the beginning as they're one gender, then they have the realization that they're trapped in another body. Then they do something about that realization. And as they slowly go on with their transformation, they become a superhero. It could be very powerful, not only to the trans community, but a piece of education for people who don't understand that community, who even hate that community. It's via education that we can heal the wounds of this world. And until we learn that, as a society, we're going to keep on polarizing each other, because we live in a very, very complex world today, a polarizing world today. And in a lot of ways, the trans community have only been within the mainstream for a very short while. It takes time. It's like when women sacrificed their very lives to get the vote. It wasn't them who bore the fruits of their fighting and their sacrifices. It's the women of today. And I think the trans communities of today are going to have to face the fact that they're fighting. And I think it's future generation of trans people who will bear the fruits of that. But we just live in such a complex world. And Disney are in the forefront of this, and they're getting it wrong, because Hollywood has no idea about good representation and good inclusion. And they've got themselves in a lot of trouble. They're now talking about bringing back Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson. Both their characters, Black Widow and Iron Man, were killed off in Endgame. So, how do you do that? Well, they're talking about the multiverse. I think it will be very difficult for them to talk Robert Downey Jr. into coming back. Scarlett Johansson, not so much, but they're in a big, big mess. This Variety article really did expose what they're doing and how they've struggled. They try and have this fair and balanced article, one person saying Kevin Feige can turn this around. Kevin Feige is a genius. And then they're saying that Kevin Feige is being stretched thin. He is the Marvel Studios president. If he can't get himself good support around him so he's not stretched thin, then it's his fault. He's to blame. I have no doubt that Disney are also to blame with what's happened with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this is the problem. They own Marvel Studios. Is Kevin Feige his own boss? Is he doing what he wants? Well, let's look at it. We now have Kevin Feige Productions. Where did that come from? Why do we have Kevin Feige Productions? Why do we have Disney, Marvel Studios, and then Kevin Feige Productions? Because everyone wants to make money, and he's so big now because he initially, was part of the building blocks of the original Marvel Cinematic Universe that made so much money. So he's one of the biggest corporate tools in Hollywood today, but he's living off his history. The gig is up for Kevin Feige, the gig is up for Marvel Studios, and the gig is almost certainly up for Disney. And it's really funny that the sycophant pundits and critics didn't see it happening. So basically, the cinematic universe has destroyed that cinematic experience. Let's move over to DC now. I was reading an interview with Nicolas Cage speaking out against AI in entertainment and CGI. And he gave us some very interesting information about when he was shooting his cameo for the Flash movie. He said he never shot anything to do with his Superman fighting a spider. He was doing completely something else, and he's highly critical of the people who made The Flash. But who made the decision not to do what Nicolas Cage was doing and put in him fighting a CGI spider? What is all that about? Well, could it be the man who decided to swap Henry Cavill for George Clooney's Bruce Wayne? I think James Gunn could have had a handle in those changes, because I think the original idea for the Flash movie was much better than the film we actually got, and the audience are not stupid. It's why it flopped. Ezra Miller's conduct didn't help that situation either. And so as you see DC and Marvel continue to stumble, it's very, very interesting. Have we reached the end of the cinematic universe? The universe, and let's look at Doctor Who. Now, in recent days, we found out about, the Who-inverse. Is it the Who-universe? The Who-universe, now on BBC iPlayer, every single episode of Doctor Who, after-show documentary, it's all there for you. Very, very exciting. And Russell T Davies, the head writer for Doctor Who, the guy who came back, the guy who created this revival back in 2005, the man's a genius. Now he's plotting this expanded Doctor Who universe. He will be looking for many, many creatives to come in to do different Doctor Who spin-offs. Can it work? It worked with Torchwood. It worked with the Sarah Jane Adventures. Can it work with Doctor Who? Well, I think there's more of a chance with the I never get it right. Who-universe, I think. But there's more opportunities with the Who-universe than there is. It the Who-inverse? I don't bloody know. Anyway, so there's more opportunities for Doctor Who on iPlayer to expand and be a bit of an IP and a franchise on, kind of television and on streaming than there is with a cinematic universe, because cinema wasn't created for cinematic universes. But because everyone went after that Marvel Cinematic Universe model, that Marvel Studios model, they got themselves in a lot of trouble, because no one's perfected that medium that Marvel Studios were so successful at for 3 phases. Was Marvel Studios always successful? They were building something up. They were building, at the very beginning, the inception of the MCU, they were building to that first Avengers movie via individual, character movies. It worked. But in the early days, they had a lot of problems. People were not happy with Captain America, the First Avenger. I don't know why, because I think that movie is outstanding. A lot of people didn't like the first Thor movie. I thought the movie was outstanding. Obviously, they all loved the first Iron Man. The second Iron Man was shit. And not everyone liked the Incredible Hulk movie. Again, I think the Incredible Hulk movie is an outstanding movie. But once they got to the Avengers movie, it may have been a hard road there, but once they got there, they got it right. And so DC and WB tried to create their own cinematic universe by bringing Christopher Nolan, David Goyer and Zack Snyder in to make a Superman movie and begin that franchise. And it was very polarizing to a lot of people. For me, if they let Snyder do what he wanted to do, the DCEU and what Snyder was doing could have been a great alternative to the MCU. And everyone insisted that DC should be doing exactly what Marvel was doing, and they were under that pressure. And Snyder was never given that great chance to be that great alternative to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's where it's all gone wrong since Snyder has left, because they've tried to kind of recycle what he did, and it's never ever really worked. And this entertainment today is on the floor because everyone in the industry has no clue in what they're doing, whether it's their commentary, their representation, their inclusion. They've got a big hammer and they're bashing you over the head with it, and nobody likes being bashed over the head because you end up getting a damn headache. So it's very, very interesting, all the things that are being exposed with Marvel Studios right now. Of course, we've got the Marvels coming out this month, and the box office isn't looking very good. The first movie allegedly made $1 billion. Do you believe that? I don't believe that. I barely believe Aquaman made $1 billion. I barely believe that Barbie made $1 billion. But moving away from all of that on this podcast, because it is kind of interesting to hear that apparently HBO or HBO Max were formulating fake accounts on social media to attack critics that weren't giving their stuff good reviews. Now, this doesn't surprise me. I've suspected this for a long time. Welcome to new entertainment, everyone. Welcome to the brave new world of new Hollywood. This is where we are today. It's all about business. And when it's all about business, you need the good reviews. And when you formulated this situation with Rotten Tomatoes, where you need a fresh Rotten Tomato, a fresh score from Rotten Tomatoes, so you can sell your product, because it's products now. It's not art anymore. And a lot of people from old Hollywood are biting back about being called content over a film, over a television series, over a mini-series. You know, nobody in this industry, and because I'm within this industry and I know nobody wants to be called content. It's the worst thing, you know. A film isn't content. It's film. It's art. And it means a lot to different people. What you've done, you've reduced entertainment to making money. And yes, Hollywood has always been a business, but it's been a business that's always had a space for artistic integrity, where you could make something that wasn't going to make a great deal of money, but then you could make something else that basically pays for the stuff, the artistic stuff that doesn't make so much money. Well, you know, today it is all about making money. And because they've become so obsessed with making money, they've ended up not making money and alienating the consumer. Because if you are sitting there calling your consumer racist and an incel and bigoted, when you in Hollywood are the most bigoted, racist people in any industry, that's the truth. There's no representation. There's no real representation and inclusion in Hollywood. They only represent black people from their own communities. They only represent Asian people from their own communities. There's no real inclusion and representation. I'm an Anglo-Greek Cypriot. Where are they? Where, they had an actor in the MCU cameo as Hercules. And he basically is from the Hollywood community and had no right in playing Hercules. It makes no sense. You know, you talk about accurate depictions of characters. Well, Hercules is a Greek god. There's nothing Greek about that actor. Now, I don't necessarily agree that you have to be from a community to play a certain kind of ethnic kind of character. But if you're going to go down those rules for certain things, if you want trans actors to play trans characters, if you want gay characters to play gay characters, if you want disabled people to play disabled people, and I don't have any issue with this. You can't pick and choose when you do this, right? And that's where Hollywood has become lost today. And, you know, as we move forward, and we are very close to ending this SAG-AFTRA strike, I hear there's only a few things they're far apart. I do think that at this week's ending, they would have resolved their differences. In the next few weeks, they'll be back at work, hopefully. But there's a lot of problems in entertainment today. And they're the same problems that are, coveting our world today. When you look at the Marks and Spencer's Christmas advert and the controversy there, it's the same things. They're trying to burn down the traditional world. And what happens is when you try and burn down the traditional world for a new world, you're going to get resistance, because we don't live in a society anymore that can do whatever it wants. People get angry if you say Christmas instead of the holidays, because apparently it offends different people from different religions. And I think that's ridiculous. I respect your religion and what you celebrate and the God that you believe in. I'm not a religious person. I don't love Christmas. I don't call it Christmas because I'm religious. I love Christmas. That's the name of the holiday I celebrate. Not because of any belief system, because I love the bright lights. I love the music. I love the films, and I've been doing it. I've had my lights up, and I've had the lights up in my front bit and in my sitting room, and I've been playing the music and watching the movies since really the end of September. That's what I do. I'm a little bit caca. What can I say to you? But when you live in a society that wants to break down tradition, and look, at the end of the day, if you don't want to be a traditional person, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. But I think what goes wrong in today's society is we try and dictate to each other what's right and what's wrong. We deny that we're all flawed people. And some of us look down on their noses on other people. And I think that's the problem that we have in society today. And it's echoing in our entertainment industry. You know, people looking down their nose at Ezra Miller, you know, and other different actors. You know, everyone was looking down their nose at Mel Gibson a few years ago as well, then Tom Cruise. I mean, you know, none of us are perfect, and I've said this before, and we're so busy thinking that actors should be better than us, that should have a special code of conduct. They don't, and they shouldn't. We're all flawed. Focus on their work, don't focus on their conduct. If you want Hollywood to be perfect, you will never see another film again. You know, and this is the problem we live in today. Everyone has this weird perception of morality. Now, the world that I come from, the mentality that I come from is that I'm not a perfect human being. I sin every single day, and that's okay. Because I'm aware of my sins, but I'm also aware of my good deeds. So even though I'm a flawed human being, right, and I have flawed thoughts all the time, as you do, and no one admits to these faults, neither should you. And I think, as I say, this is echoing into entertainment, and entertainment has become very, very problematic because the people within it have this ideology. But the problem is, when you've got an ideology, but you believe your ideology is the ideology and the other's ideology is wrong, this is where you have a problem. And, you know, once you start kicking down the other, you know, your opponent's belief system, this is where problems begin. And this is the problems that Hollywood face today as well. And so, as I say, this is the problem that we had with the first female Doctor in Doctor Who as well. Some people don't believe the Doctor should be played by a woman. I don't have a problem with that, but you've got to do your due diligence with that woman. She's got to be as awesome as the male Doctors, and she can't be flawless as Chris Chibnall tried to enact, because he's one of those ones with that ideology. And this is where the problems begin, everyone, and this is why the Marvel Cinematic Universe is toast, and it's, you know, it's in a right mess right now. And can Hollywood be rebuilt into the entertainment funhouse it used to be? Back in the day, before Hollywood was Hollywood and it started making movies, they had negotiations with the Russians. The Russians took ballet and the Americans took film. And that's where Hollywood was built. On Buster Keaton, on Charlie Chaplin. Do you think Charlie Chaplin movies and Buster Keaton movies made billions of dollars? They weren't made to make billions of dollars and to make a profit. Entertainment. Hollywood was formulated to be entertainment and not necessarily telling you little moral stories. But there's always kind of moral stories, you know, morality, you know, there's always a moral of the story. The problem is today we've all become so paranoid with Hollywood's ideology that we don't trust them any longer to give us the moral of the story. I grew up with morals of stories. They were done so well. Do you remember the old He-Man cartoons at the end? You had like a pre-credits little scene. Today we spoke about blah, blah, blah. If you're being bullied at school, go and tell someone. Or something like that. You know, be accepting of people of different races. They were great little messages. But today, you don't have the nuance. You don't have the ability to do that. I want to finish this podcast in the last 5 minutes and talk about my beloved Manchester United. I wish I had the time in the day to do separate videos, but that's not going to happen. I don't have the time. I've got lots of rehearsals to do. I've got this to do, that to do. So we're going to talk about Manchester United now in these final 6 minutes of this podcast. Last night we lost 3-0 at home in the League Cup to Newcastle. It was embarrassing, it was sad, and if you go on Twitter, it's rinse and repeat. Getting rid of Ten Hag won't solve the problem. And I mean, I heard Mark Goldbridge saying, the The people who want him out don't have a solution, don't have a replacement. I would say to Mark, what is your solution to the Manchester United problem? Because what's happened is, I don't like the Glazers either. They're a big problem, but they're not the only problem. You can have a manager at Manchester United, being a good manager, building a good team, being successful with bad owners, because every one of these managers has had money, and it's what you do with this money. Again, they're blaming the Glazers, they're blaming the structure. Well, let's look at that structure, right? We had Ralph Rangnick, one of the great minds in football. He literally rebuilt an entire club in Germany, right? He came to Manchester United as a caretaker manager. The idea was for him to become a director of football and rebuild the club. We heard him talk about not, needing open heart surgery, but it shouldn't take too long. Ten Hag rejected that plan and rejected Ralph Rangnick. Let me repeat, it wasn't the Glazers, it wasn't their directors, it wasn't anyone else that rejected Ralph Rangnick and his plans for Manchester United by Ten Hag. In the interview for his job, he gave Manchester United, the owners and the people interviewing him, an ultimatum. He said, it's either me or Rangnick and his plan. Manchester United felt they had no choice but to bow to Ten Hag. So he was trusted. He's totally in charge of the footballing side. Nobody else is making decisions at Manchester United about team affairs but Erik Ten Hag. He's been given money. He brought in Casemiro, who was great last year, but he's been in and out of injury and things like that. Our whole backline's been injured. Well, we can't say that hasn't been a problem. But when you've got a problem with your defence, the best form of defence, should I say, is attack. But Erik Ten Hag has been playing negative, long ball football, and it simply hasn't worked. And as I call them, Manager FC, they should be in Parliament. They should be running the government, because the way they spin the narrative for this manager, who they feel walks on water, is outrageous. Now, I can't think of an alternative to Ten Hag right now. I mean, the only one I can think of temporarily would be Arsene Wenger, who I saw on Being Sports the other day. I always wanted Wenger to replace Ferguson, but it never happened. Someone like that temporarily could really, really help us. There really isn't an answer to replace this manager. People are calling for his head. Some people just want a full sale so we can have competent owners. That would be great. That would take time. But the problem is, new owners are going to be looking into Ten Hag's management style. Why has it gone so wrong for Ten Hag? Well, it all started with the problems he's had with Jadon Sancho, because Jadon Sancho isn't not playing because he's a diva and he turns up to training late. They're not the real reasons. They're the reasons put forward to the club, to the media, but that's not the truth. Sancho identified a problem with Erik Ten Hag. He had his favourites. He wasn't playing certain players who were doing well in training. He was playing people like Anthony. And there was another problem. He wanted Greenwood, who had been accused of terrible things towards his girlfriend, to come back and play for the club again. These were things that Sancho and others didn't like. And this is the real problem at Manchester United. There's a divide there. Because while Greenwood has been banned from training, banned from playing for Manchester United, this has caused a divide. He's clearly a very, very bad manager. And he doesn't understand something that Fergie did and other managers before him did. You've got to treat each player differently, and you can't have favourites. Now, we know when Cantona was at United, he got preferential treatment because he was Cantona. But let's be clear, why is Anthony getting preferential treatment? He isn't Eric Cantona, he isn't Ronaldo. Then you look at the elephant of the room, that is Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, when Cristiano went into that interview and left, I was very anti-Cristiano Ronaldo. I still loved him as one of the greatest players of all time and what he did for our club in the last time and the peak time. But I was upset with him. It turns out now, well, it looks that way, doesn't it? That Cristiano Ronaldo was absolutely spot on about Eric Ten Hag. Am I Ten Hag out? I don't want to be Ten Hag out, but unfortunately, I don't see how this gets turned around. We haven't played a good game of football since before we won the League Cup. And during that run, not only were we crap when we won the League Cup, but at least we won it, we went to Anfield and we got our pants pulled down disgustingly. And as a Manchester United manager, you can't be losing to Liverpool by those amount of goals. That stays in your history. That's disgusting. And it's got worse and worse. Even when we've won games, we've been shit. And this is the problem with Manchester United. So even if we get new owners, I don't believe this manager is our future. And I think that's very, very clear now. Anyway, you can comment down below in anything you've heard in today's podcast. My name is Mick. This is Movies TV Mad. You can also follow me on Instagram, Movies TV Mad X. You can find me on TikTok, Mick Isn't Perfect, which really doesn't talk about films and stuff, but it talks about other kind of social things and things I'm going through in my life. If you want to check that out, why not? But I am Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. As I say, follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad as well. Until I see you again, thank you very much for your company. It's been a blast. I'll see you again soon.